Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Deep Dive Live on Thursday. I'm Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist and host of the You World Order Showcase podcast. I help life, health, and transformational coaches be the change they want to see in the world, but probably not in the way that you think. I'm here to bring you the second in the 5-part series on how to find your next clients with podcast. At the end, I'll reveal the answer to that burning question that I know you all want the answer to. What's the biggest mistake people keep making or make that keep them from finding clients with podcasts? Today, we are talking about what to do before you apply to podcast. Last week, we discussed how to find where your ideal clients are listening. And if you haven't watched that episode, you can catch it over in the group and later. And so you can get all caught up because these will kind of build on each other and then they will all go towards really doing well in the challenge that's coming up in December. I'm super excited about that. Each week, we're going to be covering a piece of one of the 4 main parts that are necessary to find your clients with podcast guesting so that you'll be prepared for the 5-day challenge, Podcast Guesting Alchemy. 5 days, well, it's really 4 days to find your perfect podcast and get scheduled to be interviewed so you can attract your next coaching client. And I've shortened that down to 4 days to attracting your clients with podcasting, because the other part was a really big mouthful. So be looking for your invitation to the 4-day challenge, Podcast Alchemy, 4 days to attracting clients with podcasts starting December 4th and running all week. You may be wondering why I'm qualified to be talking to you about podcasting in general. And I will have to say that I've been featuring life, health, and transformational coaches on my podcast for the last 7 months, and I've interviewed well over 200 coaches so far. The You World Order podcast is ranked in the top 5% of podcasts around the world. We've made it to 127 on the charts for podcasts for entrepreneurs in the US, which I'm really proud of. And it's really all thanks to you guys because you really helped me make that happen. What I'm teaching is based on my personal experience interviewing these coaches, doing incredible things to be the change they want to see in the world. But I've noticed that so many of them come on the podcast and don't really know how to make the most of their time with me. I believe in what you guys are doing, and I want you to be able to make the difference I believe you're here to make. And that is why I'm sharing this with you all. So kind of an overview of podcasting is that it's kind of like your opportunity to make a sales pitch to your ideal client. And I use the word pitch kind of loosely. It's a sales call or a sales pitch is constructed of a series of questions that you need to ask your prospect in order to help them make a decision whether what you have to offer is well suited for them. So we're going to go over this more extensively when we talk about creating your one sheet and what to say on a podcast. But for now, if you just understand that podcast guesting is a piece of a larger picture, which is aimed at getting you clients. So the story that you need to tell needs to cover the who, what, when, where, and why of your mission and offer. And it's always easiest if we start with what you're offering and then work backwards to what you're going to say. And in order to do that, and we're going to want to look at what your offer is and how to put your offer together. So before we do that, I want to just briefly cover why worry about this stuff before you apply to go on podcasts. Podcast guesting effectively is a process, and you're going to want to invest some time up front to really get a handle on what it is that you want to present. once you've taken care of this part of the process, unless you're pivoting your offer, you can just focus on the last 3 steps to finding and qualifying podcasts, conducting the podcast, and then doing the after the podcast tasks. So we're going to talk about the offer a little bit. Your offer is not the same thing as your what do you do statement, though they're kind of similar. So there's 7 parts to constructing a solid offer. There's the promise, the price, the process, the value added, the risk reversal, the urgency / scarcity, and the story. Each piece is really crucial to getting your prospect to say yes to working with you. And we're all in the problem-solving business. You need to be crystal clear on the problem you're solving for your audience. And it's really the only way for you to know which audience you'll want to target for your podcast. And that will in turn help you find the proper podcasts to actually try to get featured on. So the next step has to do with your lead magnet. And the lead magnet is an extension of your offer in that it needs to make sense in relation to moving your prospect, i.e. the audience, towards taking the next step to working with you. Will it solve a small part of the larger problem you're solving for the audience? Is it simple, clear, and easy to implement? And does it really make sense in relation to your offer? Like if you're offering to help somebody lose weight, you don't want to be sending them a lead magnet that's all about great hairstyles. I know that's like a big stretch, but sometimes I see people, they have a lead magnet, but it's not really related to specifically what their offer is, or they have a bunch of offers and then it leaves the audience confused. And so they really don't know what the next thing to do with your guest is. So you want to keep in mind that you always only want to be making one offer at a time. And your lead magnet needs to be moving them one step closer to working with you. It's going to solve a small problem that they have that they can get a quick win with. So keep that in mind before you go on the podcast or go to apply for podcasts, and that you want to keep this all really tight. I'm going to look over here and make sure. Okay. I figured out how to look at your comments. So I can't see who's commenting, but I'm going to assume one of them is you, Lucy, because you're the only one I know that calls me coach. Okay. So back to what we're talking about here. The next thing that you really need to take care of before you start applying for podcasts is to make sure your website is ready for company. Let's put it that way. And does your website have a working link? I've actually had people on my podcast and their website link, the link that they gave me doesn't work. Or it has weird things that show up on it. And does your offer clearly match like the feel of your website? Is it really clear what you want your visitors to do when they visit your website? Most people don't stay on a site very long. It's kind of like your business card. You want it to be clear and concise and maybe spark some interest and help them to make their decision quickly. And, it used to be you had 5 or 8 seconds. Now it's like 3 or less. So people are busy. They don't have time to mess around. If they've made it to your website, you want it really make sure that they're crystal clear on what they're doing there and how to get what they want from your website quickly. An easy way to do that is just to get a URL that leads to your lead magnet. So it's just going straight to your opt-in page. They can get what they want and move on with their life. And then really importantly, if you have your lead magnet, do you have a follow-up series of emails that's going to go out to these people that sign up for your opt-in or your lead magnet? And is it friendly? Does it make people want to stay on your list and keep listening to you? Or is it like, heck no, I'm out of here? So it's just something to keep in mind. And then the next piece on this before situation is to complete the one sheet. A one sheet helps with pitching your episode to your podcast host. And it also helps you to dial in what you're all about when it comes to being a guest on the podcast. It should have a few main points, like a photo, questions that help the host really understand how to walk you through answering all the questions that you want to answer in order to lead the audience to taking the next step with you. And there's ways to do that we will talk about in the session about what to say on the podcast. So, and in the challenge, I'll also give you some templates for actually making your own one sheet to send out. Just making sure I covered all, and you want to make sure you have your contact information and details about what you do. Knowing what to, so, okay. And then we're on to this, knowing the next step to take. Next week, we're going to cover how to qualify your podcast episodes to pitch to be on. There's a couple places you can go to get on different podcasts. And we talked last week about how to kind of do a little research in terms of finding podcasts you think your ideal clients are listening to. There's a little bit more to that we will cover, and then we'll go deeper into that in the challenge when you're actually going to be going out and talking to these people and getting on the podcast. So for now, this week's assignment is going to be to look at your offer and make sure that it's got at least clarity around what it is that you are offering. What is the one promise you're making to these people? What result are you going to get them from doing whatever your process is? Not your process, but what is the result you're going to get them? Make sure that your lead magnet aligns with that and gets them a little bit of the way to at least one step towards making that happen for them. Double check your website, make sure all the links work, make sure it's not confusing. And next week, you'll want to join us for how to qualify podcasts to apply for. So now for the answer to the big question. I know this is the only reason you guys have wanted to hang on all the way to the end. What is the biggest mistake people make keeping them from finding clients with podcast? And the answer is not being prepared. Though it's relatively easy to get on podcasts, the podcasts that will benefit you the most from being featured on will require some preparation from you to A, find them, and B, get all your ducks in a row to make sure that it's an amazing experience for the audience. Join us next week as we look at reaching out to podcasts to get featured on, and be looking for the invitation to the 4-day challenge coming up in December, the 4th through the 8th. the Podcast Alchemy Challenge, 4 days to attracting clients with podcasts, where we will be putting all of these pieces together in a 3-day intensive plus a masterclass designed to get you on podcasts where your ideal clients are tuning in. You will know what to say to move the listeners to taking the next step with you. And most importantly, I'll be sharing 2 of the 8 unique strategies I teach to maximize the leverage of your podcast episode, even if it never ends up getting aired. So see you next week. If you have any questions, pop them in the group and I'll be happy to answer them. Take care, everybody.